Tonight, we open one of the oldest files in the archives. It is a story that has appeared in ancient mythology, sailor folklore, religious artwork, fairy tales, literature, and modern film. It is a legend that has survived for thousands of years and is found across cultures worldwide. Welcome in to the Ominous Archives. Welcome back, archive members. I'm Nick.
And I'm Em.
And today, I'm sure some of you have guessed it already, because, we were pretty vague. We're doing something kind of different, because instead of one creature, one location, and one specific legend, today we're covering an entire category. Possibly the biggest one we've tackled so far.
Is that a pun? The tackled.
It could be.
Well, it's an intriguing way to open. Why don't you tell us what we're talking about?
We're talking about mermaids.
Oh, I love this.
Really?
I do.
Because I feel like I should warn you, or at least myself, really, because this got way more complicated than I expected once we started digging into it.
Complicated how?
So, going in, I genuinely thought mermaids and sirens were just two names for the same creature.
No.
What do you mean, no?
They're very much not the same thing.
Well, now I kind of know that, but before I just figured they were interchangeable.
Yeah, no, I very much could have told you that before we started.
Well, I'm going to be telling the archive members, so give me my moment of discovery.
You have that.
So, sirens come from ancient Greek mythology, and the earliest depictions of them do not look like what most people picture.
Yeah, they're birds.
Do you know they're birds too?
Yes, they're part woman, part bird, bird body, woman's head, torso usually. I've always thought it was a strange detail that gets left out in all of the modern adaptations.
For the people who did not already know that, sirens were dangerous creatures associated with temptation, death, and destruction. Their most famous appearance is in the Odyssey, where they lure sailors toward rocky shores with songs nobody could resist.
And it's not just the songs that were pretty. That's the part that people miss.
Right. According to the myths, the songs promised knowledge, wisdom, and answers to life's deepest questions. So sailors became captivated that they would ignore the danger and sail straight to their deaths.
It's a curiosity trap more than a beauty trap. It's always been the detail that stuck with me, at least. Like, you could literally be the most disciplined sailor in the world and still fall for it because it's genuinely not about attraction. It's about wanting and needing the answers.
That's a genuinely terrifying concept when you put it that way.
Yeah, it's much scarier than just a pretty song and a bad outcome.
So, then there's mermaids. Where do they actually come from, if they're not just the prettier rebrand of sirens?
Totally separate tradition. Stories about aquatic human-like beings show up all over the world, but the fish-tailed mermaid that most people picture today comes specifically out of Northern European folklore.
I'm beginning to think I should have just gave this topic to you.
Honestly, you really should have let me have this.
Well, they weren't always the villains the way the sirens were.
Not even close. That's actually one of my favorite things about mermaid folklore. They're so morally inconsistent depending on the story. Sometimes they rescue sailors from storms. Sometimes they lure ships into rough water on purpose. They can be helpful. They can be mischievous, tragic, dangerous. It genuinely just depends on which version you're dealing with.
So they're more like a reflection of the sea itself.
Generous one day, deadly the next. Just very unpredictable.
So we're looking at the Greek bird woman, who basically is a walking warning sign. And then these much more morally complicated fish women, from Northern Europe. How did everyone just merge these into just one creature?
The Middle Ages, mostly.
So it's always pretty much the Middle Ages then.
As Greek myths got copied and translated and retold across Europe, artists and writers started blending the traditions together. The bird features on sirens slowly disappear and get replaced with fishtails, because fishtails were already the familiar image from the mermaid stories circulating around Europe at that point.
So the bird woman quietly evolves into a fish woman just because that's what people were used to drawing, which goes to a lot of stuff that we cover.
Mm-hmm. By the medieval period, illustrations are regularly showing sirens as fish women instead of bird women, and it kept going for centuries. In some Romance languages, the actual words for siren and mermaid become interchangeable.
So, linguistically, they just collapse into each other.
Completely. By the time you get into the Renaissance, the distinction is basically gone from popular culture. The deadly singers of Greek myth and the fish-tailed women of Europe folklore have become one singular figure.
That's wild. Two completely different monsters just absorbed into one over hundreds of years. And, okay, here's something that I actually did pick up from the research. They're starting to separate again in modern stories.
Props to you for catching that.
Yeah, so I did go over the episode and everything, and as you can see, this is more of like a let's quiz M.
It's just always been a special interest of mine. I just enjoy mermaids. I like the sea. I don't like being
on the sea.
Right, like I like it from afar. I think it's very interesting. It's a very vast.
You like to see the sea?
It's a very vast, large thing.
Yeah. If you hear the dog in the background, which sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. That's actually Kobe tonight.
It is, not Archie in the archives.
Nope.
We've got Kobe today.
All groomed. We groomed him, and then he went and rolled in the mud puddle.
I'm so shocked.
At least his fur looks good.
I was going to say, he looks very shiny.
Doesn't he? He looks very handsome.
He always looks handsome.
Overweight, but handsome.
Oh, stop it.
He just ate Archie's dinner tonight.
He's beautiful. He's fine. Don't give him a complex.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway.
So mermaids go one direction. We have magical, romantic, sea-dwelling, and a lot of thanks to the fairy tales and obviously that Little Mermaid.
Mm-hmm.
But sirens have reclaimed a lot of their darker reputation. Modern fantasies and horror often bring sirens back as supernatural predators who use their voice specifically to manipulate, enchant, or kill.
It's very full circle back to two distinct creatures.
And there's one thing that stayed consistent, though, pretty much every version of both across all of it.
Motivation.
You're just going to take everything today.
I am. I'm done. Go ahead. You can say it properly.
This is like a me topic. We're just going to, I don't know. We're just going to quiz M or something. So, sirens lure sailors because it's simply their nature. They're forces of temptation and destruction. That's just kind of what they do. They don't really have a motive. Mermaids tend to have actual human motivations. They fall in love. They seek revenge. They protect their homes and respond to how humans treat them.
Mermaids are characters, and I feel sirens are more like a warning.
I can agree on that. And once you understand that distinction, I think everything else we're covering today makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, it definitely reframes the whole category.
All right. Since you apparently already know half, if not more, where do you think we should start? Because this story goes back a lot further than the Greeks.
Oh, like thousands of years further. This is one of my favorite parts, honestly.
Then why don't we go there?
Let's do it.
Okay, so most people think mermaid stories start in medieval Europe, fairy tales, folklore, and all of that.
Which is already thousands of years too late.
Way too late. Because the oldest known example goes all the way back to ancient Syria. We're talking as early as the first millennia BC.
A targetus.
A targetus. Tell me you know the whole story.
I know the cliff notes. I feel like I know the meat and potatoes. You can tell it. I'll jump in if I feel like you miss anything.
Meat and potatoes. That's all we're about here. Meat and potatoes. We don't ever get off topic or anything.
Oh, never.
So, Targetus was a goddess, and according to later legends, she fell in love with a human shepherd.
Mortal, divine, usually never ends well.
No. I don't think, not once. She accidentally causes his death. Go figure. The details then get a little fuzzy, depending upon the version. And she's so overcome with grief that she throws herself into a lake.
She's trying to disappear.
Totally disappear. But instead of vanishing beneath the water, she transforms. Becomes a divine being, part woman, part fish.
That transformation is the whole reason that historians point to her as one of the earliest recognizable mermaid figures that we have on record.
Yeah, because it's not just a water spirit or a vague myth about the sea. It's a specific transformation story. Woman becomes fish-tailed deity out of grief. That's a mermaid origin story in a very literal sense.
And I find it interesting that even this early, the mermaid figure is already tied to tragedy immediately. Loss, grief, an accident that she didn't even mean to cause. The emotional complexity is there from the start.
It sets the tone for basically everything else that follows. But here's where it gets even older. Because the idea of human-fish hybrids might predate a Targetus entirely.
Mesopotamia.
Ancient civilizations there depicted beings called Kalulu and Kalutu, fish men and fish women.
And they're very different in tone from what we would usually think of, right?
Like 180 degrees different.
Yeah.
These weren't seductive or dangerous the way later mermaids would be. They were protective spirits. Images of them show up in Babylonian and Assyrian art, going back thousands of years, and they're associated with protection, wisdom, and divine power.
So the earliest version of this archetype isn't a temptress at all, it's a guardian.
It's a guardian, which I think really challenges the assumption a lot of people walk in with, that mermaids were always meant to be dangerous or seductive. The oldest versions we have are actually protective figures.
And that thread continues with Ea too.
So the Babylonians worshipped a water deity named Ea, who later became known as Oannes in subsequent traditions. And he's frequently depicted as a human figure connected to a fish body or a fish garment, almost like he's wearing a fish as a costume over his human form.
And the stories about him aren't about danger or temptation at all.
Now, the stories about Ea describe him emerging from the sea, specifically to bring knowledge, civilization, and the learning to humanity. Kind of like the, are they centaurs? The dudes from Harry Potter in the Woods. I think they're centaurs.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Oh, I forget his name. The one guy who comes to Harry when Voldemort's in there. He's like, Harry, you shouldn't be out here.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I can't think of his name either.
I can't think of it.
Because there's three of them. I just listened to it in the book, too. There's the three of them, and then the one becomes a teacher. But I think they're centaurs.
Yeah.
I think they're centaurs.
Well, yeah, he's basically a teacher, a civilizing figure who happens to come from the water.
Which connects to something that keeps showing up across totally unrelated Greek cultures. Water and supernatural wisdom being linked together over and over again independently.
It's one of those patterns where you have to ask, why does this keep happening? Totally different civilizations, no contact with each other, and yet they all land on the same idea that wisdom just comes from the depths.
It's probably one of my favorite questions in all of the research. Now there's also some speculative stuff too. Some researchers have suggested mermaid mythology might stretch even further back than Mesopotamia.
Are we talking about the cave paintings?
You're good. Saying this like she doesn't already know everything. There are claims that certain cave paintings in North Africa depict human-animal hybrids resembling aquatic beings.
I want to be fair to this one, though. It is genuinely controversial. Not widely accepted at all.
But even as a contested theory, it tells you something. It shows how far back scholars have been willing to trace this fascination. Humanity blurring the line between human and animal, specifically in the water, might go back into actual prehistory.
Even if we can't prove it, the fact that people are looking that far back says something about how deep I feel like the archetype runs.
Yeah, now here's the part of this section that genuinely surprised me the most, because I always assume the mermaid siren blending started in the Middle Ages, like we talked about earlier.
Yeah, it's older than that too.
Archaeologists found a small number of ancient images that appear to show fish-tailed sirens. Not the bird woman we'd expect from Greek mythology. Fishtails.
Well, which one? Because there's a couple of them.
There's a vase from Megara dating to the 2nd century BC.
And the Roman lamp.
Which that lamp was discovered in Britain.
Both are genuinely rare finds, and nobody can fully agree on what they mean.
Some scholars think that their evidence of fish-tailed sirens actually existed as a tradition alongside the more famous bird women. Others think that they reflect culture exchange, Mediterranean ideas mixing with Northern European traditions, where aquatic women were already a common figure.
Either way, it pushes the blending back centuries earlier than anyone assumed.
Which I think says something really important about how folklore actually does work.
Yeah, it doesn't develop in isolation, for sure.
It travels with merchants, with soldiers, with sailors, storytellers, all constantly shifting and blending as they move from one culture to the next.
And maybe that's exactly why mermaid stories show up so consistently all throughout history. Every ancient civilization depended on rivers, lakes, and oceans for survival. You can't survive without water.
So, I have a tangent. There's like a side tangent, semi that or goofy Mandela effect kind of thing that has been on my brain since this thing shut down. So do you know anything about that CERN thing?
Mm.
So I don't actually know what it does or anything like that. But people correlate that with Mandela effects. So when it shuts down or turns back on, they say we shift timelines.
Okay.
And
makes sense. Something's got to happen.
The sirens and stuff could all just be shifting timelines.
It could be. Because you certainly can't chalk this one up to a Ouija board being open somewhere.
No, that was that's even kind of a stretch with the whole timeline shift.
Yeah.
What got me really thinking about is the fact that you eat Chick-fil-A, and apparently the K is back in Chick-fil-A.
Don't do this shit to me. What do you mean?
That's what I heard. Apparently it was removed. It was just CHIC, Fala. And now it's back to being
now I can't even
CHICK, Fala.
Anyway.
All right, whatever.
I don't actually hurt my brain. I can't think about Mandela effects for too long.
It got me thinking enough where I had to almost do something. I almost had to stop doing what I was doing because I'm I can't get this off my brain. So there's food, transportation, trade, fertile land. Also,
Storms, floods, shipwrecks, death without warning.
So it makes a strange kind of sense that so many different cultures landed on some basic idea. That something powerful has to live beneath the surface.
Some protective, some wise, some destructive, but almost all of them rooted in basically the same thing. Respect for how unpredictable water actually is.
And that idea, water is something powerful enough to deserve its own mythology, that's what's going to keep coming up over and over again and again as we go around the world. Because every culture we're about to cover took the same basic idea and ran somewhere completely different with it.
I'm very excited for this part. I feel like this is where we get interesting.
So let's go around the world in 20 minutes. So here's what I find genuinely amazing about the next part. Cultures completely separated by thousands of miles with zero contact independently come up with stories about human-like beings living in the water.
And they're not all the same story, just wearing different clothes. They're genuinely different. Different meanings, warnings, different relationships with water entirely.
So let's head on over to Japan. Because the Japanese version doesn't look anything like what most people picture.
The Nino.
And forget the fish-tailed beauty image completely. The Nino is described as having a human face, fish scales, and sometimes, this is the detail that got me personally, a monkey-like mouth.
Which is very unsettling in a very specific way. Not beautiful, unsettling, just not right looking.
A really wrong looking in a way that's hard to picture and feel comfortable, I guess. And the role it plays in the folklore is really different too. The Nino isn't out there seducing sailors.
It's an omen.
The sightings get associated with storms, disasters, misfortune. If you see one, something bad is coming.
And there's the contradiction.
Despite being a bad omen, legends also claim that eating the flesh of a Nino could grant extraordinary longevity.
So it's simultaneously a warning sign and potentially a miracle cure.
Both of them at once, which I think reflects something really specific about how the culture viewed the sea. Danger and mystery intertwined. Not one or the other.
It's not good or bad, it's both, depending entirely on what you are willing to risk.
That's a good way to put it.
Thank you.
So, from Japan, we're going to move on over to Eastern Europe because the water spirits there take a much darker turn.
Rusalka.
Yeah, the Rusalka. These aren't really mermaids in the traditional sense at all.
They're restless spirits.
Specifically, the spirits of young women who died tragically, often through drowning. Almost like the Woman in White kind of deal.
Which already tells you something about how the legend functions. It's not, here's a creature that lives in the water. It's, here's what happens to you if the water takes you before your time.
That's a really haunting way to look at that. But these spirits are believed to inhabit rivers and lakes, and depending on the story, they can appear beautiful and inviting right up until they lead the victim to their deaths.
But even the folklore doesn't even agree on whether they're villains.
No. Depending on the region and the specific telling, Rusalki get viewed either as fully malevolent entities or as tragic figures trapped somewhere between life and death.
Which is so much more complicated than just scary water ghosts.
Yeah, and unlike a lot of mermaid figures we associate with the ocean, Rusalki are tied to rivers and lakes specifically, local waterways. The very real, very specific dangers that those places actually posed to people.
It's folklore growing directly out of geography. You don't get Rusalki without a creature that lived alongside rivers that could and did kill people.
Which is something I think that's going to come up again and again also in the next one. because we're moving to West, Central, and South Africa now. And I want to take some real time with this one.
Mami Wata.
And I want to be upfront. This isn't just an old folklore story we're pulling out of the dusty archive. This is a living spiritual tradition. People practice this today.
Yeah, this one deserves to be handled properly.
Mami Wata is a powerful supernatural figure, frequently depicted as a beautiful woman associated with water, wealth, healing, and spiritual power.
And what's really important is that she doesn't fit neatly into the hero or villain box the way a lot of Western mermaid stories try to force their characters into.
Yeah, not even close. She's neither purely benevolent nor purely evil. She can bring prosperity, good fortune, healing to her followers.
But she can also demand loyalty.
And punish those who break their promises to her.
Which I think is the part that really separates her from how a lot of Western audiences default to thinking about these figures. It's not reward or punishment based on being good or bad. It's about relationship, about reciprocate what you owe and what you're given.
And her stories emphasize that supernatural forces, like the water they inhabit, can be both generous and unpredictable. Not because she's moody or inconsistent, but because that duality is the actual nature of the relationship.
It mirrors the water itself in a really direct way. The same river that feeds your crops can flood your home. The same ocean that feeds your community can take someone from it. Mami Wata embodies that truth rather than simplifying it into something more comfortable.
And I think that's worth sitting with for a second. Because this tradition has survived migration and colonization, diaspora, and it's still practiced, still meaningful, still evolving today across West Africa and in diaspora communities around the world. This isn't a relic, it's alive.
Yeah, I think that's important to say clearly rather than just folding her into a list with everyone else.
All right. So our last stop on this trip around the world, maybe we're a little under 20 minutes, is Scotland and Ireland.
The Selkies.
The Selkies. And technically, fun fact, Selkies are not mermaids at all.
They are shapeshifters.
Specifically, they are capable of shredding their seal skins and taking human form.
And the stories that come out of that premise are genuinely some of the saddest folklore I've ever heard.
They really are. A lot of Selkie legends center on stolen skins, forced marriages, this overwhelming, constant desire to return to the sea that never goes away.
Some versions are definitely romantic on the surface. The Selkie falls in love, stays on land, builds a life.
But many of them are deeply sad underneath that romance, because the sea in these stories isn't portrayed as a place of danger the way it is in a lot of other traditions.
It's portrayed as home.
A home that can never truly be forgotten, no matter how long someone's been away from it, no matter what life they've built on land instead.
There's something almost unbearably human about that to me. Just like the longing for a place that you just can't return to.
It's a different kind of tragedy than the Rusolki. Not violence, not punishment, just longing. Persistent, unresolved longing.
And when you put all four of these side by side, the Ninyo, Rusolki, Mami Wata, and the Selkies, none of them are really telling the same story.
They really aren't. But there are these threads that keep showing up no matter where you look.
Water is life and healing, but also danger and death.
And beings caught between the two worlds, never fully human, never fully animal.
Transformation, mystery, temptation, loss, the unknown.
And maybe that's exactly why these stories show up everywhere people have ever lived near water. It didn't matter where you were on the planet. Water meant survival. It meant food, transportation, trade, and prosperity.
It also meant the constant possibility of losing everything without warning.
The floods, shipwrecks, drownings, across cultures with absolutely no contact with each other. People looked at the same basic relationship with water and arrived at remarkably similar conclusion.
Something powerful has to live beneath the surface.
And now that we've gone around the world looking at what people believed, I want to ask the question, underneath all of it, why did so many sailors swear they'd actually seen one?
Is this where the manatees come in?
Yep, this is where the manatees come in. So, we've covered mythology pretty thoroughly at this point. Different cultures, different creatures, different meanings, but there's still the really obvious question hanging over all of it.
If these were purely legendary, why did so many sailors insist that they'd actually seen them?
Exactly. For centuries, reports of mermaids show up in actual ship logs, journals, first-hand accounts from experienced sailors, explorers, and navigators. People whose entire job depended on accurate observation.
It's definitely easier to dismiss that from where we're sitting now, but life at sea was completely a different reality.
We're talking weeks, sometimes months, crossing enormous stretches of open ocean. Storms, shipwrecks, disease, dehydration, malnutrition, and total isolation.
The sea is definitely beautiful, but it's also actively trying to kill you the entire time.
Sort of like Australia. But in that environment, the stories about supernatural beings flourishing makes a lot more sense.
So what's the leading explanation? Because I feel like I know where this is going.
You do, and probably a lot of people do. Manatees and dugongs.
The manatees.
The manatees. And on the surface, that sounds like an absurd explanation, right? Like, how would you confuse a manatee for a beautiful mermaid?
They're famously not the most glamorous animal.
But viewed from a distance in rough water, they actually have some features that read as surprisingly human. They surface to breathe. They nurse their young against their chests. They have forward-facing eyes that can look almost expressive.
So from far away, exhausted, half convinced something's out there already,
a manatee rising out of the water starts to look a lot stranger than it would today. Looking at one clearly in broad daylight from a boat tour.
Context completely changes what you're capable of seeing.
Which brings us to one of the most famous examples in history, Christopher Columbus. During his voyage in 1493, Columbus recorded seeing what he believed were mermaids.
And here's the detail that gets me almost every time.
He said they weren't nearly as beautiful as legends suggest.
Imagine being that disappointed by your own mermaid sighting.
Right. I'm looking... I guess you're not looking for mermaids. You see them and then you're like, well, they're not as beautiful as I thought they were.
Not what I pictured.
So he's out here making history, genuinely believing he's seeing a mythological creature, and his first instinct is to write down that, it's a little underwhelming.
He saw a manatee and immediately gave it a bad review.
Modern historians genuinely agree he'd actually observed manatees, which do inhabit the waters where the sighting occurred. And I think what's genuinely interesting about that account is that even an experienced explorer, someone whose entire career depended on careful observation, still interpreted an unfamiliar animal through the lens of folklore he already knew.
Which says something important. It's not that people are gullible. It's that the brain reaches for the explanation it already has available.
But wildlife alone doesn't explain every sighting. Conditions at sea can play tricks on the mind too.
Exhaustion, loneliness, dehydration, bad nutrition.
All of which will genuinely affect perception. Make people more vulnerable to misinterpreting what they're looking at and more prone to visual distortions.
And if you already believe that mermaids might exist,
your mind can fill in details that simply aren't there.
So what about the ocean itself? I feel like there's an actual phenomenon involved here too.
There is Fata Morgana.
I love that name.
It's a genuinely beautiful name for something pretty wild. It happens when layers of air at different temperatures blend light in unusual ways. And the effect is that ships, islands, animals, they can appear stretched, distorted, or even suspended above the horizon.
So a completely ordinary object can suddenly look impossibly large or strange or human-shaped.
Yeah, think about the picture every now and again that goes around on Instagram where it's like, oh, these boats are floating in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And
that. Yeah.
The ocean itself becomes an unreliable narrator. And then there's a theory I find genuinely compelling. The idea that mermaids were never fully meant to be taken literally in the first place.
They were symbols.
Symbols for actual dangers of the sea. Ancient Greek sailors warned about sirens whose songs lured ships towards destruction. Some historians think that might reflect very real hazards. Hidden reefs, rocky coastlines, dangerous currents.
So the siren song itself might be a metaphor.
Some historians have even suggested the famous siren song could have been inspired by the actual sound of wind moving through coastal cliffs or sea caves. A genuinely eerie and haunting noise with a completely natural explanation. But one early sailors didn't have the tools to identify.
Which loops all the way back to what we said in the very first section. Mermaids reflect the contradictory nature of the ocean itself.
The sea gives you food, trade, safe passage one day, then storms, shipwrecks, and death the next day.
Mermaids embody that same duality, rescuing sailors in some stories, leading them to their deaths in others. Beautiful and terrifying, protective and dangerous.
And honestly, I think the more interesting question isn't whether sailors truly saw mermaids.
It's whether they were interpreting something real through the stories they already knew.
Someone stares across an empty ocean for months, sees an unfamiliar shape rise out of the water, already lives in a culture where mermaid legends are completely normal and widely accepted.
Of course, that story survives for centuries.
Of course it does. Okay. Speaking of stories surviving because people really, really wanted them to be true,
Here we go.
we need to talk about the single greatest mermaid hoax in recorded history.
The Fiji mermaid.
The Fiji mermaid.
I've been waiting for this one since we started.
All right, well, by the 19th century, belief in mermaids enters a completely new phase. Sailors aren't really the primary source of these stories anymore.
It's showmen now.
There's showmen, museums, traveling exhibits, newspapers. People who figured out that there was real money to be made convincing the public that mermaids were real.
And no hoax is more famous than this one.
None of them. The Fiji mermaid, and despite the name,
It's not a beautiful sea maiden.
not even slightly. It was a grotesque creation made from the upper body of a monkey sewn onto the tail of a fish.
A taxidermied nightmare.
The specimen likely originated in Japan, where similar mermaids were actually crafted and sold as curiosities before making their way to Western collectors.
This wasn't even an original con. There was a whole supply chain for fake mermaids.
There's a whole industry, apparently. And its specific rise to fame starts with a sea captain named Samuel Barrett Eddies, who purchased it in 1822.
And then it ends up exactly where you would expect.
P.T. Barnum.
Because of course.
Barnum gets his hands on it and launches this incredibly elaborate publicity campaign. And the centerpiece of the whole scheme is a completely fake naturalist.
I love this part.
Dr. J. Griffin.
Dr. J. Griffin, just an invented person.
Just an invented credential designed entirely to make newspapers print stories claiming the creature was authentic.
It's truly such an elegant con. You don't even need real evidence. You just need someone with a doctor in front of their name just willing to vouch for it.
It worked, though. Visitors finally showed up to see the famous mermaid they've been reading about in the papers.
Yeah, and instead of a beautiful sea creature,
they're greeted by a small, shriveled monstrosity.
A genuinely upsetting little object.
And yet, the exhibit became a massive success.
Because people weren't actually convinced it was real.
No. And that's the part that I find so interesting. People weren't necessarily fooled. They were captivated by the possibility.
They wanted to participate in the maybe, even if part of them knew better.
And the Fiji mermaid wasn't even unique. It was just one of many similar exhibits touring throughout the 19th century.
Which makes sense given the era, and also makes sense if you know anything about P.T. Barnum. He was just a con man. New species were genuinely being discovered all the time. Strange fossils just kept turning up.
So the idea of real mermaids didn't feel entirely impossible to people living through that.
More than anything, I think these hoaxes just reveal how badly people wanted one of humanity's oldest legends to actually be true.
Which is honestly the same impulse driving most of what we cover on the show.
Well, don't expose us like that.
Well, from the hoaxes, let's talk about how mermaids got reinterpreted through literature and pop culture. Because the transformation here is honestly massive.
This is where the tragic mermaid really takes shape.
Right. For most of their early history, mermaids were unpredictable. They could rescue you. They could kill you. They could grant wisdom. They could bring disaster. Rarely just simple heroes.
And that starts changing hard in the 19th century.
No work more influential than Hans Christian Andersen's The Little Mermaid, published in 1837.
And people really do not know how dark the original Little Mermaid is.
The mermaid endures excruciating pain just to become human. She sacrifices her voice and ultimately sacrifices her chance at happiness too.
It's very much not an adventure story. It's about sacrifice, identity, love, spiritual redemption.
It transforms mermaids from these mysterious folklore creatures into something genuinely sympathetic, deeply human, even though she's not human at all.
And then the Victorians ran with that completely.
The pre-ref elites, especially consistently painting mermaids as these beautiful, melancholy women caught between two worlds.
I mean, that image is basically still the default vision today.
It really is. And the film picks up the thread in the 20th century. Splash presents mermaids as romantic, often comedic figures to navigate human society.
And then 1989 happens.
And then 1989 happens. Disney's The Little Mermaid permanently reshaped the public's perception.
Ariel becomes the mermaid. Adventurous, curious, optimistic.
Completely removed from the dangerous water spirits of older folklore.
But not everyone wanted the softer version.
A lot of modern creators went straight back to the darker roots. Pirates of the Caribbean, On Stranger Tides brings mermaids back as beautiful but genuinely deadly predators, luring sailors Into the Depths.
And then there's Into the Drowning Deep.
Mary Grant's novel. And full disclosure, this is actually a Scare Me Sam book recommendation.
Shout out Sam. She has great taste.
She really does. And this one takes the dark version even further, presenting mermaids as intelligent apex predators rather than misunderstood heroines at all.
No redemption arc. Just genuinely smart, genuinely dangerous animals.
Which honestly might be the most unsettling version of the legend we've covered today.
What about the lore?
Oh, the lore is one of the most fascinating modern examples. Polish film blends horror, fantasy, and musical elements.
It's a musical about predatory mermaids.
A genuine horror musical. And it captures both traditions at once. Alluring and dangerous, romantic and monstrous, all layered together.
It's basically a reminder that mermaids have never actually fit into a box.
Which I think is the whole theme of today's episode in miniature. And television got in on the mythology too. Not just fiction, but fake nonfiction.
Ah, the mockumentary.
In 2012, Discovery Channel airs a fictional documentary called Mermaid, The Body Found.
Presented completely seriously, like a real scientific investigation.
And it convinced some viewers, like me, that mermaids might genuinely exist.
I too, it's part reason why I know so much about mermaids is because if that wasn't, I needed to know. Despite repeated disclaimers saying it was fiction.
People still believed it. It became a massive cultural phenomenon and really demonstrated just how willing people still are to entertain the possibility.
We want to believe so badly that even labeled fiction doesn't fully stop us.
Which I think says something pretty profound about why this legend has survived as long as it has. Today, the line between mermaids and sirens has gotten blurry again. TV, literature, fashion, social media, using the terms basically interchangeably.
Both have become symbols now. Beauty, power, mystery, independence.
But underneath the modern interpretation, trances of the older folklore are still there if you look for them.
Princesses in some stories, monsters in others. Most of the time, something in between.
And maybe that's exactly why they endure. Few mythological creatures adapt to every single generation the way mermaids have.
Tragic romantics, fierce predators, symbols of freedom, things lurking beneath the waves.
They reflect whatever hopes, fears, and fantasies we happen to be projecting onto the sea at any given moment.
Which brings up an obvious question for today, doesn't it?
Are people still seeing them?
Are people still seeing them?
Shall we find out?
Shall we?
So we have, after thousands of years of mythology, folklore, sightings, and hoaxes, we land on the obvious question.
Are people still reporting mermaid encounters today?
They are.
Even now, satellites, underwater drones, smartphones in every pocket, global communication, instantly available.
And reports just keep coming in. Most get explained pretty quickly. Hoaxes, misidentified animals, optical illusions. But the stories themselves never actually stop.
Okay, so tell us about the Kiryat Yam, because I love this one.
One of the most famous modern cases, in 2009, the Israeli town of Kiryat Yam, multiple witnesses claimed they saw a creature resembling a young girl with a tail leaping out of the water at sunset.
Multiple witnesses, the part that always gets to me, not just one person.
Multiple separate reports. And attention got so significant that local officials actually offered a reward.
How much?
$1 million for anyone who could provide a definitive photographic proof.
a literal $1 million and nobody could produce a single usable photo.
Despite all that publicity, no credible evidence ever emerged.
Yeah, that tells you something. Honestly, $1 million is an enormous incentive. If there was anything real and remotely photographable out there,
someone would have gotten that shot. And these days, social media is basically taking over as primary source of modern mermaid sightings.
Videos claiming to show mysterious figures in the water, racking up millions of views.
Before eventually getting explained as digital manipulation. Costumed performers, ordinary marine animals, filmed from a weird angle.
Which, speaking of costumed performers, there's actually a database for that now, right?
New Zealand's Mermaid Sightings Database. Genuinely real. Collects reports from around the country.
And a lot of the entries are playful, right? Not meant to be taken as serious cryptid evidence.
Yeah, plenty involve performers wearing monofins or artistic costumes. People who know exactly what they're doing and they are just having fun with the legend.
Which I think is actually kind of nice, the existence of something that shows mermaids aren't just an old legend anymore. They're an active part of modern culture. People are choosing to participate in the mythology.
That's a good way to put it. And television keeps stoking the fire too. In 2013, a fictional mermaid mockumentary aired on Animal Planet.
Presented as serious scientific investigation.
Just like the Discovery Channel one we talked about earlier. And it was also convincing that viewers actually contacted government agencies.
Asking about mermaids and alleged cover-ups.
Which I think is the clearest evidence that of all, that people still want there to be something unexplained beneath the waves.
Even with disclaimers, even knowing that it's fiction, part of the brain just wants to believe anyway.
And from a purely scientific standpoint, the evidence simply isn't there. Organizations like NOAA, the National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration, are very clear that no evidence of aquatic humanoids have ever been discovered.
Marine biologists generally point to the same combination of explanations we've talked about throughout the whole episode.
Misidentified wildlife, environmental conditions, and specific psychological phenomenon called pareidolia.
Where the brain recognizes familiar patterns in ambiguous shapes.
We're wired to see faces, figures, meaning, even when none of that actually is present.
Which honestly explains a huge percentage of everything we've covered on this entire show, if we're being honest with ourselves.
Yeah, probably true. But I think the more interesting question was never really whether mermaids existed.
It's why people keep reporting them anyway.
The oceans cover more than 70% of this planet, and most of the deep sea remains completely unexplored even today.
For centuries, mermaids have lived in that exact gap between what we actually know and what we still allow ourselves to imagine.
They represent mystery in a world that increasingly feels mapped, measured, and explained down to the last detail.
Goddesses, monsters, spirits, cryptids, symbols. They've been all of those things. Sometimes within the same creature, sometimes within the same story.
And maybe that's exactly why mermaid stories keep getting told. Not because anyone's found proof,
but because part of us still hopes there are mysteries left to discover.
That's a genuinely lovely place to put a bow on this. And honestly, looking back at everything we covered today, the bird women of Greek mythology, architect grieving herself into a goddess, Mami Wata, still actively worshipped right now, the Selkies who never stopped longing for the sea, even a taxidermied monkey sewn to a fishtail, somehow capturing the imagination for over a century.
It's all the same impulse, really, looking at the water and knowing something has to be down there.
Something has to be down there. All right, archive members, that's the Mermaids and Sirens. The whole sprawling, contradictory, genuinely ancient history of it.
Which, full transparency, I obviously clearly had some prior knowledge on this topic, but I did learn plenty today as well.
You really did. You kind of... I thought we were going to steal my thunder this episode.
I'm sorry. I had to make sure we were doing our due diligence here.
As always, this episode was researched and written by Samantha. And if you enjoy horror, thriller, dark fantasy literature, go check out her podcast at Scare Me Sam. That's where she reviews books from across the darker side of fiction.
Including the one that we mentioned today, Into the Drowning Deep, is a genuine Scare Me Sam recommendation. So if Predator Mermaids sound like your thing, definitely start there.
And if you enjoyed tonight's archive, please follow the Ominous Archives on all of our social media to stay up to date on new episodes and future dives into history, folklore, mythology, and the unexplained. And don't forget to go check out our store.
Yes.
We do have one of them. We're not very good at, I don't want to say advertising.
Yeah, no, that's the right word.
Yeah.
Promo.
Yeah, we're not very good at that. But it's there. If you look for it, we got one.
Yes.
So with all that being said, I think we out.
We out.
Yeah. Until next time, stay haunted and stay weird. See ya.
See ya.